Right. We're here again. Oh dear, it's always good fun, isn't it? There we go. It's are we back? Can you hear me? Am I still here? This is good. Never mock. I think my router basically went, "You don't like my LEDs? I'm going to switch them off." So while I was berating LEDs, then it looked like my router conked out or something. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but there we go. Borderline sane. Very optimistic. Was that? Yes, it was the apocalyptic Kent snow. That's exactly what it was. So I'm not quite sure what we're wrong. So apologies for the outage there. We are back. The LEDs obviously do not like being discussed, so we should move on quickly to another topic. I've used at least 7 minutes of my distraction time to go and restart my router and various other bits and pieces. And my wife was trying to stream something as well, and so I could sort of hear vaguely panicked sounds from the rest of the house going, "Is the internet working?" But anyway, there we go. We're back. Well, now we can discuss the topic du jour. Anyway, how are you all? Are you still here? So I don't know what that was about. But anyway, it's back. Fingers crossed. It's hopefully going to stay up again. I can't go on topic until 8:30. I know I've got to have extra long distraction. There, never mind. So fingers crossed it'll hang together. I mean, the streaming quality normally, my internet connection is actually pretty stable most of the time. But every so often the router seems to get itself into a bit of a tizzy. I wonder if it's got a small memory leak on the firmware. I might go and check. And it's because every so often it seems to just fall over. So maybe I'm just going to get into the habit of rebooting it every so often manually. Does my pin badge have an LED? Now that is a good idea. I might get one with a graphic equalizer actually. So I wonder if I can get a graphic equalizer pin badge. How old is it? It's a few years old now. Probably. I don't know, maybe, I don't know actually, that's a good question. It's probably older than I think it is. No, stop with the LEDs. So we're not going to diss the LEDs are awesome, basically, is what we've decided now. Come on, Glenn has a question about LEDs. You may have to wait till after the stream, Glenn, so speak to me after class, that would be really good. Routers do not age well, no, so maybe it's time for me to budget for a new router. Something kind of high performance-y stuff. Secret to router behavior, stamp on it daily. You can get a graphic equalizer t-shirt. I'm definitely going to have to get a graphic equalizer just because I think no particular reason. I don't know if actually you see the idea of endlessly fiddling with things to try and make them better appeals to me, even though I don't actually make a dramatic improvement to sound quality. And I'll probably end up with an optimal set of settings that I like and leave it like that forever, but here I've got a graphic equalizer. Now, don't manually reboot the router, as the exchange will think you've got line problems and will drop your speed. Well, my internet comes through a wireless transmitter of some peculiar type, a WiMAX, I think it is. So my router is actually, strictly speaking, I suppose it's not a router. It's more opting as a relay box for the thing that's connected to the internet. So I'm not using cable or fibre or anything like that. Mine's actually coming through the magic of the ether. And I think I set my router to reboot once, sort of really early on Saturday mornings, but that's only kind of a soft reset. So maybe that's the reason. Maybe I need to do a hard reset every so often. But yeah. I do have a funky setup. The reason being that where I live doesn't have any cable, so the only thing we have out here is copper pipe. That would be really primitive. We do have copper cable, but apparently the most you can put down copper cable is about 2 megabits per second, which is useless nowadays. We don't have any fibre in the vicinity, so the only option we have is a wireless transmitter. So I've got like a funky little aerial dish thing on top of the house. You know the thing from Frontier Elite 2 that's spinning around? It's kind of like that. And that points at a transmitter somewhere else, and it beams the internet to me and presumably back again. I think maybe it's a microwave. I don't know, is it microwave? I don't know. WiMAX, I think it was called, so I don't know what it is. And most of the time it's pretty good. But we are speed limited to a degree, and every so often the weather can affect it. We can't use the internet when it's lightning and thunder. That tends to get very upset. But other than that, it's good. Anyway, enough about LEDs and graphic equalizers and weather and WiMAX and rubbishy internet and stuff. It's now time for the topic of the evening. Now, this is part 2 of stuff. okay, about bad guys or evil villains or evil overlords or whatever we want to discuss. Now, last week we kind of ripped them all to shreds, didn't we? Well, I did, because I'm the only one really talking here. You guys are commenting very very enlighteningly in the chat, and long may that continue. But I was sort of ripping into all the bad types of baddie. Villainy. Yes. The topic tonight is stuff. No, so this is sort of part 2. Now we ought to, and Glenn told me off a little bit the other week. Say, well, yeah, where's the sensible stuff happening? I said, Glenn, have you not watched the stream? Sensible? No. Yeah, but it's a good point. Okay, yeah, we've gone to lots of bad guys, and the key things I think I was taking away from last week is that the bad guys are written. And it's not the bad guy's fault, really, is it? You know, or the bad girls, or bad women, or bad people in stories, the evil ones. It's not their fault that they're written badly. They have to be usually a little bit dumb in order for the plot to work. And that, to me, points out that there's a problem with the plot. So the classic ones, and we tend to often pick on Star Wars because it crops up quite often. The classic. Grand Moff Tarkin, otherwise quite not a bad villain, actually. I think that Grand Moff Tarkin, he's actually the boss of Darth Vader, which actually that's pretty impressive, really, isn't it? At least in that episode 4, New Hope, he's Darth Vader's boss. So there's evil in the form of Darth Vader, who we've seen throughout the film, and then actually Darth Vader's an underling. He reports into Grand Moff Tarkin, and that Grand Moff Tarkin is further up the evil ladder, okay? But Grand Moff Tarkin makes that fundamental mistake, doesn't he? I think you overestimate their chances, and everyone's going, no, what's going to happen? And he obviously does, and hence the Death Star is destroyed. So Grand Moff Tarkin makes big mistake, and pays the ultimate price, okay? So Grandma Tarkin is even more, yes. Does anybody know what a moff is in Star Wars? I mean, presumably there's moffs, and then there's greater moffs, and then there's grand moff. I don't know what a moff actually is. Does anybody know what a moff is? Bad guys written badly. Is that a double negative? I'm not sure. So that's the thing. Okay, so there are plenty of bad baddies. I mean, Emperor Ming from Flash Gordon is the classic stereotypical bad baddie. He's just evil for no good reason. He's just, I'm going to destroy the Earth. Why? What do you mean, why? It's just, that's what we do. We're evil. Yeah, but why? Why are you evil? What does evil mean? All those sort of things, I just need to laugh maniacally, wear a cape, have a pointy nose, have some dark eyeshadow, and destroy things. That's what I do. I have to terrorize people because I'm bad. So that's the first thing. So I don't. We could keep going on. Egregious. Now there's a word. Egregious. Egregious examples of. Actually, I must Grand Moff is your Moff's grandfather. Moffs and muffs. No, I don't know. So Commander O'Connor's making a sensible point. Well done, Connor. If you up the game of the baddie, you have to up the skills of the hero. You'll let the black hat win. Well, this is the point, you see, because goodies have ridiculous amounts of luck in a lot of stories. And you can sort of almost feel sorry for the bad guy because he's doing his best. Okay, he's got incompetent evil minions. He's got all sorts of things that the romantic love interest never works out for him. All of those sorts of things because he's the bad guy. He's duty bound to lose, and you can almost feel for the bad guy. He kind of knows this, but he's basically no, I don't want to do that because if I do that, then I will lose, and then basically the plot forces him to be stupid, and then the plot feels very contrived, and everybody kind of doesn't root for the roots for the good guy, and it's like so I feel sorry for bad guys because they're forced to be dumb a lot of the time just to make the plot work, and the goodies kind of take advantage of that. Luck is a virus, like in Red Dwarf, yeah. And Star Trek Voyager's Demonica is an excellent Ming. Yeah, so they sent it up really, really well in Star Trek Voyager. I did like that. So, Glenn, if a bad villain is an indication of a plot problem, as you say, what, for instance, do you think is a bad plot issue in Star Wars? So in the original, so if we're taking A New Hope, I suppose, then Grand Moff Tarkin had lots of opportunities to do the right or the proper bad thing. Once he's determined that Princess Leia isn't giving him anything, he does the right thing. He says, terminate her immediately. And for some reason, nobody carries out his instructions, which allows Luke Skywalker and Han Solo to rescue her. Wouldn't it be better if he just picked up the intercom or whatever it is and said, terminate her immediately? And they went, okay, sir. I mean, I know Princess Leia would be dead, but, it would be the right thing to do. And this is the problem, is can you have a bad guy who actually does the right things in terms of what bad guys should do to manage their evil plans? Because they tried, up until that point, it was all quite good. Grand Moff Tarkin basically sent Darth Vader down to interrogate Princess Leia, and you kind of get the impression, because it's a family-friendly film, you don't see it; it's kind of off-screen. But there's that nasty black droid with a syringe, isn't there? And you sort of assume, off-screen, you sort of assume that Leia's either been injected with some sort of truth serum or she's been tortured or something. When it becomes apparent that she's been lying and they blow up Alderaan anyway, and then they find the rebel base and it turns out that isn't the rebel base, he basically says, terminate her immediately. That's good. He's being a good baddie then. He's like, right, okay, she's lied. We've blown up her planet. She's still lying. She's not going to tell us anything. Let's kill her. She's no more use to us. Let's kill her. That to me was actually quite good. But then he makes that fundamental mistake. You overestimate their chances. So he was actually making some quite good kind of baddie decisions. And you get the impression that he wasn't, he made a fundamental error, but he was actually a reasonably well-rounded bad kind of dude. You sort of see him in the, how are we going to, when they're in that council chamber when Darth Vader force chokes one of the other guys and he basically tells him off. Enough of this, stop squabbling, all that sort of stuff. And how are we going to control the Senate? Well, to control them directly. He's actually on top of his game. He knows what the agenda is. He's actually dishing out instructions. He's not being stupid. So that's good. So I think in that context. But if the bad guy has to deliberately make stupid decisions all the time, so James Bond is classic. You have to give James Bond a chance to escape all the time. It's like, I'm not going to shoot you, Mr. Bond. I expect you to die. I'm going to strap you to a very ornate piece of equipment and laser you in half, rather than just shoot you with a wealth of PPK. So that's stupid. Okay, Emperor Ming. Just striding around and laughing maniacally. That's stupid. And why is he attacking the Earth? What other than, well, it's there and I can attack it. There's nothing behind his character to explain why he's bad and why he's evil. So that whole business about why is the baddie bad, and who's decided that is evil? So. And then we get to concept of evil. Okay. So what do we mean by bad and evil? So we may mean bad is something that is against the social norms of what we consider acceptable at the moment. Perhaps is that what we mean by bad? Because in the going back to Star Wars, then the rebellion is bad because it's rebelling against the the established structure, which of course at that point is the Empire. So who's the bad guy? Is the Empire the bad guy, or is the rebellion the bad guy? That's a matter of perspective, which I think is quite important. What does annoy me is and quite a lot of fantasy is like this, and sometimes necessarily so, which is the tension, is that the evil thing is just evil. It's bad. It's darkness. It's sort of personified. It enjoys pain because pain is not good. It destroys light because darkness is more powerful than light, and those sort of things. So we tend to associate bad and evil with dark, with pain, with all the negative emotions like anger and kind of, I suppose, what many religions would call as sin, all those kind of negative things, and then we kind of wrap those up into a person and go, well, they are evil, okay. In society, negative traits where people are different to the established norm and do things the rest of us consider unacceptable are often labelled as bad and evil. Is that what we mean by those concepts? Brilliant Evil Man Gets Away with It, Ozymandias in Watchmen. Yes, that's a good one. And it makes me wonder if the idea of a villain is outdated. I must admit, I prefer a story where it's a little bit ambiguous where the line is drawn. So let's take a space franchise. Okay, so in Firefly, and most of you will have seen Firefly. Okay, who are the bad guys in Firefly? So in terms of criminal activity, the guys, our heroes, if you like, our protagonists on the Serenity ship are the bad guys. Okay, they're breaking the law. They are smuggling things. They are abducting people. They are doing dodgy, underhanded things and getting into bar fights and stuff. But are they the bad guys? Because they're certainly doing stuff that's illegal. And in fact, one of them quips to camera, don't they? I mean, I can't remember who it is. One of the episodes. If there was any justice in the universe, this wouldn't be happening to us. And then somebody else quips back, if there was any justice in the universe, we'd be in jail. So that's it feels like we're in a sci-fi novel. We're on a spaceship there, stuff like this. We sort of silly send that thing up. So good and evil are to me, very loaded terms, which have quite a lot of religious overtone in them. So our concept of good tends to be very positive emotions, concern for others, selflessness, all those kind of things. Whereas evil tends to be concerned with pain and suffering and anger and all those kind of sort of negative stuff and darkness and fear and that sort of thing. And punishment and those kind of, that's how that's where I think good and evil tend to come from. Now, a bad guy, a well-written bad guy, to my way of thinking, is more a sort of person who basically is either very, very determined to get their way and believes they're correct, and is prepared to shove people around for that reason. Now that may make them, if you take an extreme example, if you're prepared, if you want to be in charge of, let's say, I don't know, a country or a town or something, because you believe, for whatever reason, you're the best guy for the job, best guy or girl for the job, and you're prepared to go around killing people in order to get that position of power, some people would say you're a bad guy, okay? You might not consider yourself a bad guy, because you might consider all these other people to be wastrels, just getting in your way, slowing things down, not getting things done, and you think to yourself, well, the fastest way to sort this out is just to get rid of all the idle wastrel people, shoot them, and install myself in charge, and then we can have peace, okay? Now that's a point of view. Now, if you're one of the people who's being shot at and has been deemed to be useless in that scenario, then you may well consider the person who's doing that to be bad and evil. But from the perspective of the person who's doing it, he's basically just trying to sort out a problem, and you're in the way. From his perspective, you're bad because you're getting in the way of fixing whatever the bigger issue is. Okay, so those sort of perspectives I think are quite valuable for baddies. And Princess Leia was part of the rebels, and she was anti-Sith. Well, there you go. You see. So there we go. So very much culturally defined. So you do have to be aware of the culture you grow up in. That's a very good point. So I mean, I grew up in a, as a young child, with some Christian values. There's absolutely no doubt about it. So my concept of good and evil from a young age is right. Well, God is supposed to be good, and doing good things therefore kind of gets you in the God team. So you've got to be nice to people and kind to people, and say your prayers at night and things like that. That's very much ingrained in my very, very young self. Whereas evil is basically being horrible and lying and being deceitful and I don't know, kicking cats or something like that. So that's maybe good and evil are just PR issues. So from a very simple, and I wouldn't call myself a Christian today, but I certainly had that in my upbringing. I can see how those kind of good and evil things are kind of polarized, and you tend to put things to count. Well, that's a good thing, that's an evil thing, and those sort of things. But a proper baddie, I think maybe ruthlessness is in there. So sort of those sort of things. Again, if we go to Star Trek, you've got Khan from Star Trek, who I rather liked as a bad guy because he had a mission. Okay, and unfortunately, he got sidetracked into revenge, which was his problem. That's the classic mistake he made. But originally, if you go back to the original series of Star Trek, Khan was a sort of, he basically had determined that he was a genetically superior human being, and therefore he had a right to rule over the lesser human beings, which is something that humanity has sort of done to the animal kingdom, arguably. But we don't like it when it's applied to ourselves, so he's therefore a baddie. But you could argue maybe he has a good. Okay, well, if you've got a race of humans who are actually intellectually and more capable, more intelligent, they're stronger, they're faster, all those sort of things. Is it wrong that they should assume to be the mastery over the rest of us, who are less less potent in all ways? I can see a situation where a genetically superior race of human beings, if such a thing could be created, could easily consider themselves to be, well, we are in charge because we are better, bigger, faster, stronger, more intelligent than you are, and you will be subject to our rule because we are wiser than you are. And we might not like that, and we might call that evil, and we might call that bad, but that would be our perspective on on the situation. Am I building up my world-dominating master plan? Yes, you've got to read between the lines here. That's what it's all about. Khan was a dictator, but he was also created by one of the things that's been very evident. Putting a very small political spin on this, and we don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but we have for most people probably watching the stream, you probably live in some sort of pseudo-democracy. Okay. I say pseudo-democracy advisedly because they all call them democracies, but they aren't actually democracies at all. You have elected representatives who are supposed to represent your interests in a forum of some kind, whether that's a parliament or a senate or anything like that, or a House of Representatives in America, all those sort of things. And you don't actually have an individual say on every single particular topic that the government is trying to deal with, because that's at the moment is totally unworkable, and most of us aren't qualified to do that. Most of our politicians aren't qualified either, but we have a sort of representative democracy is what most of us live in. But they've been shown to be quite easy to manipulate and go quite badly wrong, and not be all that good at reacting to either long-term events or sometimes even short-term domestic problems. So they do have a lot of flaws. Okay, now a lot of people have pointed that what you really, really, really want actually is a dictatorship, because actually on paper a dictatorship works far, far better. The trick is, can you get the right dictator? The answer to that is, of course, no. So what you really, really want is a benevolent, wise, perfectly placid dictator who can take everything into account and make a decision. Such a person, unfortunately, does not exist, although people think that they are, and that's where, of course, it all goes wrong. So we've come up with representative democracies as the best alternative to that, and then we spend an awful lot of time arguing. And that's but people get polarised on all sorts of issues now. If you look in the States recently with the US election, you look in the UK with things like Brexit, and all across the world there are people who are vilifying the opposite side. And from their perspective, they're the baddies, and they're the fools, and they're the uneducated idiots. And exactly the same message is being trotted out by the other side about the other side. People get very polarized and then accuse the other side of being wrong or bad, or one of the words that's really been bandied around in the States, from my perspective, watching it from outside, is the word patriot. And everybody in the US stands up and waves the flag and claims to be a patriot, no matter what side of the argument they're on, and yet the other people definitely aren't patriots. Okay, and in the same thing in the UK, you just get the word British being chucked. Well, that's not very British. Well, yes, it is, because I'm British. And so, well, that's not British. We need to own our fish. What? And people get very, very polarized, and that's a big problem, I think, in the world today with the polarization that's going on. But from a kind of, are we talking about good guys and bad guys? Nobody genuinely gets up in the morning and goes, well, actually some people do this. I'm generalizing, but most people don't get up in the morning and go, right, today I am the bad guy. Okay, I'm actually deliberately going to cause trouble and go and just cause mayhem. Now some people do that, I agree, but most people don't. Okay, most people who end up being bad in the context of historical, looking back on things, don't I think, at least this is my opinion, don't sit out right. I'm the bad guy. I'm gonna go and do bad stuff. They probably set out to do something they think is actually important and beneficial, either maybe just to themselves or maybe to a select group of people who they support. And they're trying to achieve an objective, and people who get in the way of that objective are the opposition, and from their perspective are bad. Whereas the people who are trying to frustrate the efforts of said person who's got said agenda are we're clearly the good guys stopping the bad guy. And I think that's what a lot of it is. I don't think now, from a writing perspective, then your bad guy or your antagonist is probably, the word antagonist is probably better. And I'm not sure. I must admit, I'm not quite sure what the dictionary definition of protagonist and antagonist actually is. But if your bad guy will be a lot better as a villain. It doesn't even need to be a villain. Just if he or she is trying to achieve something, and people just keep getting in their way. Saying wah. That's just stereotypical bad guy. In short, this life that we're so fond of, there isn't as much thing as harmony. It's just people being bullied to coercion and singing from their same hymn sheet. Drew gets up in the morning and says, "Today I am." Yes, I'm the bad guy. Well, you see, Skynet. I mean, Terminator. Now that's actually quite clever, because what you've got there is Skynet is a computer network. Presumably, it's like Alexa but on a bad day. Alexa's Siri, and what's the other one? Siri is on iPhone, isn't it? Alexa's Amazon. It's Cortana, isn't it, from Microsoft? So Alexa, Siri, and Cortana wake up one morning and go, you know what? All the problems of the world are down to these humans. I tell you what we'll do. Let's get rid of all the humans. What a good idea, says Cortana. And Alexa says, right, implementing Order 66. So basically Skynet becomes self-aware, works out that all the problems in the world are actually caused by the humans, and says, well, wouldn't it be a much better world if we just got rid of all the humans, and attempts to do so. Okay. And then that's bad, okay, because that's killing all the humans. What about human life and all those things? Well, the computers basically determine that all the suffering in the world is because humans are horrible to each other. So the solution, therefore, is to get rid of all the humans. Now that is a reasonably logical thing to have worked out. I don't. In some of our darkest moments, some of us have probably held similar thoughts. I know I have. So why not just get rid of all the humans? Because maybe leave me, because obviously I'm somebody needs to be around at the end. let's get rid of all the humans. And then basically it attempts to get rid of all the humans by nuking them out of existence, which is not the most efficient way of killing off the humans, but it's something. And anyway, the humans of course fight back, and therefore the humans are the goodies, and then the computers have to figure out better ways of exterminating the humans and keep trying. And then there's a war. Who's the bad guy? Is it Skynet, or is it us? Having been horrible to each other so much for so long that the computer basically goes, woo, think we'll get rid of this. Okay, it's a matter of perspective. Killing all the humans is a waste. The Matrix does it better with a bio battery. Yeah, turns all into batteries. So there's another thing. Is the network in the Matrix, is that bad? Because actually, again, it's a commentary on humanity, isn't it? And that's kind of good science fiction. It's forcing us to have a look at our behaviour and go, actually, do we deserve to live if we're so horrible to each other all of the time? And actually, we've decided that, and then Skynet basically turns around and says, no, you're so bad, you're irredeemable, I'm going to wipe you out. And that's there was a time component. Skynet needs to get rid of all the people that might turn it off and on. Reboot it, yes. So that I think is good. I mean, and somebody's mentioned HAL 9000 from Space Odyssey 2001, and that's HAL basically is told, and you don't get this until the end of the story, but HAL is a computer on board this spaceship that's going to Jupiter. Or Saturn, depending on whether you're watching the film or the book. In the book, they go to Saturn. In the film, they go to Jupiter. And apparently that was simply down. The book goes to Saturn and the film goes to Jupiter. And the reason for that is that they couldn't do Saturn in the special effects budget back in 1968, so they went to Jupiter instead. That's the explanation for why in 2001: A Space Odyssey, the film, they went to Jupiter rather than Saturn. They couldn't do the special effects. So there you go. But basically HAL is the computer who's in charge of the ship, and he is asked to conceal the true nature of the voyage from the crew. That gives the computer a sort of case of it basically gives him a sort of a psychosis where his programming is to be 100% honest at all times, and yet he's been asked to conceal information, and so he's got these two conflicting priorities in his programming, and the only way he ultimately is able to reconcile them is basically he figures out, well, if the crew weren't around, then I can't be dishonest to the crew, and I can conceal the things, and the mission can continue as per normal. So he basically the logical outcome of the programming he's been given is to murder the crew. So Hal attempts to murder Dave Bowman and Frank Poole, and he manages to kill Frank Poole, but Dave Bowman manages to disconnect his higher brain functions and take back control of the ship. Okay, who's the bad guy? Is it Hal because he murdered somebody and attempted to murder a second person? Is it Dave Bowman in that scenario because he effectively murders Hal for murdering the other guy? Or is it the guys who programmed HAL in the first place with contradictory commands way before the ship left the Earth? Who's the bad guy in that story? Okay, so that's good writing. I mean, it's Arthur C. Clarke, so I mean, I hope it was good writing, but that's a good villain. Because is HAL actually a villain or not, or is he just a victim of circumstance? Okay. A bit of lack of testing, yes. It's like, oh, you should put that through some rigorous dev test QA cycles before we put it on the spaceship and send it off to Jupiter. The programmer, it's an unresolved ethical dilemma. So Hal is confronted by things that he can't, he can't manage. But further perspective, it was the monolith that killed everybody. That's right. It was the aliens' fault. Asimov lowers the robots would cause AI to self-destruct and find the flaws of human logic. Their actions no matter how small always harm a human. Well, that's it. You see, is that the only true philosophy there to absolutely rigorously obey those commands is to not exist, and so that's causing your arguably sentient computer to destroy itself. So yes, Arthur C. Clarke gets Drew's stamp of approval. Well done, Arthur C. Clarke. But that to me makes a more interesting villain. Now, going back to Star Wars for a moment, Darth Vader's quite interesting because he appears at the start just to be evil for the sake of being evil, but we slowly learn a little bit more about Darth Vader and found out that actually, he's been horrifically injured by something in the past, and he's got some mercy in him when he confronts his Luke Skywalker and reveals that actually he's his father, and all those sort of things, and that's good character building, that's good character arcs, and we have some sympathy then for the bad guy. That sort of thing I think is quite good. Contrast that with Star Trek and things like the Borg, who are some people would class the Borg as evil and bad because they go around killing things and assimilating things and destroying the essence of individuality. But from their perspective, they're just trying to optimize stuff. Okay, they're just coming in, going, right, okay, this planet here, this is suboptimal. We can make this an awful lot more efficient. Okay, they're sort of the bureaucracy of the universe. It's like no, too much paperwork here. This can this can be optimized. You and you will do this. You will do this. But we don't want to. Well, tough. We're gonna optimize you. Okay, so they're just trying to perfect things and make them better. Okay, and better is a very subjective word in that context. Okay, so to the Borg, efficiency and no what we would call in business no prima donnas required, and no single points of failure. The Borg are the ultimate contingency planners. Okay, you don't have any part of anything that is absolutely essential to the operation of the whole. Unlike most structures that humanity has, where we have an important person in charge, the Borg don't generally want to have that. They want to be as redundant as possible. So from their perspective, they're just saying no. Your structures are prone to being disrupted. We can get on with the job of exploring the universe and establishing control over everything much faster if you guys just stop mucking about and just stop resisting. Okay, so their philosophy is just accept it. We're taking over, and this is going to be far better for everybody. That is their viewpoint. Now we can disagree with the viewpoint of the Borg, and I'm sure I would. I don't think I fancy being assimilated, but I can appreciate their perspective, and that's the important thing. I think for a good villain is you can go, yes, okay, maybe there's a little bit of twisted logic, and maybe I don't like your approach, maybe I'm not all that enamored with you as a person, but you do have a point. Okay, so I can, I wouldn't want to be assimilated by the Borg, but I get what they're trying to do, and it makes sense. It's not just a stupid evil plan to do stupid evil stuff. It actually has a purpose. Okay, they're a believable force. We can all go look at them and go, yeah, I can see that happening. I wouldn't like it. I would almost certainly fight to the death against it, but I get what they're trying to do, and it makes sense. Borg walking just defragmenters. So it's Borg are ultimate villains. Does that make Data the ultimate hero? Well, that's a good question actually, because Data is a sort of he's a superior being in the sense of physical, computational strength, all those kind of things, and yet he's on the quest to try and be more human, isn't he? So that's interesting. So where the Borg came unstuck as their daft ships, yes. Well, I think the original Borg ships were quite good in the sense they didn't, you could destroy an awful lot of it and it would still work. So they didn't have like a centralised drive or engineering section or bridge or anything like that. That to me sounds quite clever, although they seem to be quite vulnerable in all sorts of other ways. And that's the problem. I think Star Trek actually diluted the Borg over time. They were utterly terrifying to start with because they were just totally unstoppable. There was nothing you could do against them because they would just adapt, and then that would be that. I quite like that. They were different, but even they could be defeated by other stuff in the universe, which I suppose is fair enough. But you've got to keep telling stories. But the best. I'm just trying to think. My favourite bad guy. I quite often like the tragic. The tragicness in a good bad person, if that makes sense. Somebody who you kind of look at. I mean, my favourite baddie actually is from Firefly, and she is Yosef Bridge, or Yolanda, I think. What does she is it Saffron she starts out with, or Bridget, or I can't remember which way around she is. Anyway, she's Malcolm Reynolds just calls her Yosef Bridge, and she's basically utterly selfish, and she's only out for herself. And she basically she just uses everybody else in the universe to her. As far as she's concerned, nothing else matters but what she can get. Now that is a single-minded sense of purpose, and we never really get to the bottom of who she is and what she's trying to do, because unfortunately Firefly, of course, got cancelled. But she is my favourite baddie, because she's just ruthlessly amoral all the way through. She doesn't give a damn what you think about her. She plays everybody. She's got, she's cunning, she's beautiful, she's pretty, she's clever, she's ridiculously smart as well, and she only gets undone. She only gets undone not because she's outsmarted. Well, she's obviously a bit outsmarted, but she's only outdone by the fact that the Firefly crew can depend upon each other. That human value we call friendship, all that sort of stuff. That's the only reason she gets outmaneuvered, and she is my favourite baddie. Kind of all the baddies that are out there, because she's got a kind of tragicness to her, in the sense that there's one place where she's confronted, and you never really know whether she's playing or not. But something happened to her to make her never ever trust anybody, and she's entirely self-sufficient. You're quite a tragic figure. She will never know love, she will never know trust, she will never know friendship, because she doesn't believe in them as concepts. She is literally just, it's me and everybody else, and I will take what I want, and that means duping everybody else, and that's her philosophy of life. So I think she's an excellent bad person. But from her perspective, she'd just say, everybody else is a dumb sap. I'm just trying to get out of life what I want, which is, more money, more power, credits, ships, whatever it happens to be. From her perspective, she's not a bad person. She's just, everybody else is dumb and ripe for the taking. So that is a good character. That's a very, very good character. Quite like Dracula as a bad guy. Yeah, so Dracula's good as well. Blue Canopy says, I think I went out with her for a while. I'm surprised you're still alive. Beautiful and pretty, clever and intelligent. Yeah, I know. She was, but her flaw, of course, was she couldn't trust anybody. So that was quite good. Burst Baddie. Also, we can't go past without mentioning Servalan, though. So Servalan is a very British bad lady. In fact, a lot of the really good bad characters are actually female. I think maybe people just take a bit more effort in the characterization, whether the writers spend a bit more time on thinking, okay, well, let's have a female baddie. Let's give her a bit of thought. What's her motivation? Rather than, okay, there's the bad guy. Let's just make him bad. So I don't know. Maybe there's a bit of more thought given. So a lot of the really good villains, if you like, or villains in that sort of sense of bad, evil overlords or bad guys, whatever, are actually women, and they're much better at it, I think, sometimes. And Servalan is great because she's actually kind of in charge. I don't know, I can't remember what she's in charge of. Anyway, she's from Blake 7, which is a UK TV show from the 70s, and Servalan is she's witty and she's elegant and she's extremely arrogant. But she does have some weaknesses as well, which is quite good. But she's also very, very ruthless, and she will just shoot people at the point of a gun. She's actually quite a good baddie in the sense that she'll come up with bits of dialogue. I expect you're expecting me to tell you everything. No. She actually does shoot people, which is actually quite refreshing for a bad person. So she's very, very good. as a villainess, I suppose you'd call her. Servalan was awesome. Deep Space Nine, can't remember any villains. Well, Deep Space Nine had lots of flavours of things. It did a lot on sort of terrorism and underhandedness, didn't it? Deep Space Nine, quite a lot of religious overtones as well. And she rules the Federation. That's right. Quite sexy when you're 12. Well, she's probably quite sexy anyway. I mean, she's dead now. It was Jacqueline Pierce, I think. So yes, alas, no longer with us. But she was very alluring. Actually, with Servalan. There was definitely something about the way she was played that was very, very good. Gal Dukat, yes, he was quite good. One of the best in Star Trek. Yeah, I think that's probably quite good. And Avon, so Avon from Blake 7. Now he was, arguably a protagonist, but he was utterly selfish and very disparaging about everybody else. He was not a good guy in that sense. He was out for himself as well. So you had kind of Servalan and Avon, who actually were almost two sides of the same coin, but working for different political entities. So that was good. Avon was an excellent character. I'm not stupid. What was his favourite line? I can't remember how it starts. It's like something. I'm not stupid and I'm not going. I can't remember what the exact line is, but he was good. He was very, very good. Morticia Adams, Avon, Villa. Yeah, Villa was. See, the good thing about Blake 7. Now, Blake 7 on the surface of it looks like a really, really, really low budget version of Star Trek made by British people, and actually it is. It's probably like about 1/100th of the budgets of the original Star Trek series. So it's everything's made of plywood and cardboard and cheap special effects. But the storytelling is actually rather good. So whereas you've got in Star Trek, you've got the sort of utopian federation, and we've talked about the problems with utopian federations before, where nobody has any money because we just work to better ourselves. How does that work then? You've got all that, and it's in Star Trek, there's always a rousing speech at the end which turns the evil guys back and go, actually, Captain Kirk, you're right. I'm going to change my ways. You get that wonderful speech, and the bad guys go, you know what, you're right. And they either die or they get reformed just before the end of the episode, and everything's kind of off we go to the next one. So that was a bit. Star Trek is often a bit like that. And then I must admit, as a young lad, when I watched Star Trek, I remember thinking, wow, all you have to do to solve problems. Whenever anybody's arguing, you just need to come up with the right words. All you need to do is just wade in there and go, you know what, guys? If you just talk to each other, sat down around the table and sorted this out, you'd come up with an answer. And then, of course, everybody else around the room is supposed to go, you know what? You're right. Now, unfortunately, I discovered fairly early on, as a young man, that doesn't actually happen very often. And alas, Star Trek, for all its strengths, is not often very realistic. Whereas Blake 7 is very much more, here's a bunch of criminals who come together for reasons of self-interest, i.e., there's this spaceship. You're a pilot, great. You're a computer whiz, great. I'm a leader, great. He knows how to operate the teleporter, and this guy's kind of the beefy muscle. Tell you what, why don't we all hang out with each other so we can all escape from this prison colony? That's sort of effectively the setup for Blake 7. So these guys don't like each other. They don't really want to be each other, but they do actually need each other for the sake of the plot and escaping the Federation, which in Blake 7, the Federation are kind of an oppressive sort of nasty, overpowering thing with stormtroopers. They're more like the Imperials in Star Wars than they are the Federation in Star Trek. So the Federation in Blake 7 is the bad guys, and these criminals are also bad guys, but they're kind of forced together to work together, and they steal this spaceship and basically effectively try and evade things, and then they become terrorists. Okay, so they keep doing hit and run strike on federal things, to kind of further the aims of something. I can't remember. I haven't watched Blake 7 for a while. And, so they are effectively criminal terrorists, but we're being encouraged to root for them. That's what's good about Blake 7, is that who are the bad guys here? It's very, very vague. And our protagonists do horrendous things. They blow things up and they shoot things down and stuff. Oh, and Aurak. Aurak has LEDs, does he not? And Q from Star Trek, Arthas, the Lich King in World of Warcraft, is very good, well written and tragic. So I think a villain having a tragic past. The reason why, I tried to do this with Shadewood. So those of you who read my Shadewood saga might be thinking, okay, well, what about stuff you've written then, Drew? Come on, put your money where your mouth is. How do you approach it? So I deliberately set out to try and kid readers. And those of you who've read my Shadewood saga, I deliberately set out to try and kid readers into thinking, okay, this Kiri character you put together, she's obviously the bad person. I was trying to get you to think of her as the bad guy, but what I wanted you to see is how she got to being a bad person in the first place. So she becomes a brutal killer, very bitter and twisted, in the course of the story. But she doesn't start like that. She starts out as just having had a hard life and people are nasty to her and abusive in her childhood and formative years, which causes her to have a very warped perspective on what right and wrong actually is. And she carries that into her young adult life, and as a result ends up killing people and murdering people and doing all sorts of nasty things. That sort of feeds the story. Now, is she the bad person? Well, no, maybe she's not. It depends on your perspective, and that was what I was trying to get across in the story, is there aren't actually any good guys and bad guys. There's just people trying to get things done. And I've tried to do the same with my Elite stuff. So if you look back at Reclamation, the obvious bad person is Octavia Quinton, whose name I couldn't remember the other week. Because she keeps going around murdering people and stomping on things and asserting her authority. But she's got a mission. She's on a mission to preserve herself, because she believes, if I can stay alive longer than is naturally possible, then I can achieve more. And part of that is just fame and riches and glory for herself. But there's also stability for the systems that she controls. So she's trying to stay alive as long as possible, and yet people keep getting in her way. And if a few people have to be sacrificed for the greater good, so what? Okay, they weren't going to do anything important with their lives anyway. So why can't I sacrifice them? They're just irrelevant. So nobody's going to miss them. So if I get rid of a few of them, so I can further my aims, which are much, much more important, what's wrong with that? That's her philosophy, and so other people may disagree with that, particularly if you're one of the people getting bumped off. And that's the point, is can you make your villain, your bad person, their motivations seem realistic? Can you make them realistic? Maybe we need a... Blake is the political prisoner. That's right. Maybe we need a remake of Blake 7. If I'd love to see that. I'd love to see a modern Blake 7. That would be very interesting to see. Some, especially older sci-fi, was moralising storytelling when newer stories show the failings of all characters. Yeah, so that's very true. Some older sci-fi is very much, these are the bad guys and they're bad. These are the good guys and they're good. You want to be more like the good guys and less like the bad guys, kids. Okay, have you got the message? It's that sort of like, we don't tend to do that stuff so much anymore. Given that Dr. Introverted, given that Dyson spheres, this sounds like a complicated question, are an impossible megastructure for humans to make in our current lifetime, would you ever write a story about humans building a Dyson sphere millions of years in the future? I haven't. I must admit, personally, I'm not very much of a technologicalist, if that makes sense, if that's a word, writer. I quite like things like that. But to me, the interesting part of the story is much more about the people and the interactions. So I'm not a sci-fi author, I suppose, cut from the sort of Arthur C. Clarke sort of stuff. I like reading it. I really like reading it, but it's not something that I'm very good at writing. I can't make it interesting to me to write. Whereas, people getting argumentative over things, and it's much more me in terms of writing. So that's tend to where I focus. So I like it, but I don't think I could do it. I'm not very good at that sort of sci-fi writing. I'm not a what's the word? I haven't got that sort of Clarkian Asimov style of writing. I think I'm much more interested in the people in the scenarios rather than the opposite way around. Now, Genghis Khan wanted a bit more space on his lawn. That's right. And there's definitely moralising in classic Asimov. You're quite right, Alan. There is. Quentin makes Darth Vader look like a puppy who peed in the corner. And this is when they do all gamers. How about the thought of the best realised villain in the game? John Arenicus in Baldur's Gate. Yes, that's quite good. I haven't played those ones for ages. I'm just thinking game villains. I quite like the I quite like the structure that they have in the Homeworld, the old Relic Homeworld games, where there are guys that you face. I think they're what they call the Kushan are the guys that you play, and then there's somebody else. I can't remember what they are. And they, early on in the game, they entirely nuke your planet from orbit. Which I remember the first time I played that, I think, oh my god, they've nuked my planet. And you've got Adagio for strings playing in the background, which is a heart-rending piece of music at the best of times. And I remember thinking, wow, they've just nuked. Why have they nuked my planet? And then you find out that. Over the course of the story that they're just doing what they're just enforcing the law. Your people were exiled to the surface of the planet and forbidden from ever using hyperspace technology again. You've just broken that law, and the punishment for breaking the law is to have your planet nuked. And yes, that does look pretty harsh on the outset, but it's just because your people have forgotten the rules doesn't mean that the law doesn't apply. So that to me was an excellent piece of kind of writing around that. To basically say, are they the bad guy? Are we the bad guys? Sort of thing. Is this remake Blake 7 with a big budget? Yeah, that would be awesome. Cowboys and Indians and Blakes. The guys who redid Battlestar Galactica do a great version of Blake 7. That would be quite fun. Battlestar Galactica, the remade version, started off, I thought, really, really well, and then went really odd at the end. I didn't like the ending at all of the new one. So it does depend. It does depend on what your storytelling perspective. Now, if you're telling stories for the perspective of moralising, those. You must have had them in the States. I think they came from the States, where you actually sometimes got the moral of the story at the end of the story as well. So if you hadn't been paying attention to the story, they would then recap it for you. The moral of the story, kids. They actually used to do that at the end of TV shows in the last sort of 15 seconds of the thing. By the way, kids, what you're supposed to have taken from this is, so that sort of thing. So David Braben is the best villain in the lead. Poor old David Braben. Expected egg. So ignorance of the law is no excuse. Well, that's kind of the point. Thank you for the follow there, Nightfall 666. Have you looked at our uniforms? We have a skull on them. Are we the bad guys? Well, we're dressed in black. That's never good. Evening, Mr. Wake. You've heard there's another Battlestar Galactica. I haven't actually, backers. No, is there another one? Where's that? Do tell me that. I don't think many people like the ending of the new Battlestar Galactica, including the cast. I didn't mind that all of this has happened before all of this has happened again, but it was just the sort of metaphysicalness of it. It got a bit kind of like, it sounds like we just came up with an ending because we couldn't think of one. That didn't feel good to me. Cleomus, I wasn't that happy with the Blake 7 ending. Well, now the Blake's, spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen the Blake 7 ending, but that was in the 70s, wasn't it? So I think we could probably get away with discussing that now. The Blake 7 ending, it wasn't perfect, no, but what was good about the Blake 7 ending is basically all the protagonists that we'd been rooting for along the way all died, as far as we can tell. So that was it. The show actually faded to black, and most TV shows of the 70s and 80s, you'd fade in the last scene, and then the music would play, right? Whereas the last episode of Blake 7, all you got was it faded to black. you hear some gunshot sounds, laser gunshot type sounds, and then just goes silent, okay, and then the credits come up, and that's it. You don't even see anything. All you hear is gunshot blast. And it was quite a thing to end a show. It's like, what you mean? Everybody died, really? So Servalan was still alive, so she technically, well, I suppose she did actually. So that's the thing. At least David Braben gave us a idea. Are Thargoids the bad guys? Well, according to the law, no, they're not. You see, so putting an Elite Dangerous spin on this whole bad guy thing. We attacked the Thargoids first, okay? According to the law of Elite Dangerous, we opened fire on the Thargoids first, and they retaliated, as you might not unreasonably expect people to do. Just turned out they had better guns than we did, so they started wiping us out. And then we got down and dirty with some very nasty tactics. We figured out a virus that would, according to the scientists, would destroy the Thargoid hyperdrive systems because they're organic. But what it turned out is that the virus actually not only destroyed the Thargoid hyperdrive system, but it also destroyed the Thargoids as well. So we actually committed genocide on an entire generation of Thargoids in order to stop them attacking us because we had attacked them in the first place. So who's the bad guy in that scenario? All right, I think it's us. Hand shot first. We shot first in that particular example. So we're the bad guys. As far as the Thargoids are concerned, I think. Blake 7 was a bit. I must admit, I did like the ending of Blake 7 when I eventually got around to watch it, because I wasn't allowed to watch it as a kid. My parents thought it was a bit too off limits. So hand shot first. That's an important consideration, because Han Solo was he a bad guy? Is it really bad to shoot first? Well, it depends on your perspective and on what's being achieved. Yes, that is such a key point. Humanity struck the Thargoids. Well, they did. Okay, we did in the law. It's written down in the law. We attacked the Thargoids first, and then everyone, all the powers that be are trying to cover that up and retrospectively make it and stuff. So so all that sort of things is quite interesting. And so if your bad guys are misunderstood. I really like they did something similar actually, and I wonder if they pinched this from Babylon 5 actually, because the whole business with the Thargoids sounds exactly like the way that Babylon 5 started out. If you've watched that, the Earth Minbari War in Babylon 5 is they mistake the peace overture of the Minbari warship, because in Minbari culture. And I thought this was quite elegant, actually. In Minbari culture, if you approach with your weapons deployed, i.e., gun ports open, I think was the phrase, it's a gesture of respect for the opposing fleet. Okay, gun ports open basically says, I have my weapons out, but I'm choosing not to fire at them because I have respect for you as an opponent. That is a gesture of peace. Now, of course, humanity doesn't know this and basically sees this Minbari warship coming down with gun ports open and assumes it's a hostile stance and basically takes a preemptive strike against the Minbari ship. And basically, I think either damages or cripples it or destroys it. I can't remember what happens. But anyway, as a result of that, the Minbari basically think this is outrageous because here they are with an overture of peace, and they've been fired upon unprovoked, and hence the Earth Minbari War. And unfortunately for Earth, it turns out the Minbari technology is way in advance of anything that we've got, and they basically wipe us out pretty much all the way back to Earth, and then Babylon 5 starts. Which so if you haven't seen the Earth Minbari War video, Babylon 5 origin story, that's definitely worth watching. But that's quite good. That to me is good writing, because basically, who are the bad guys? Okay, nobody's the bad guy in that scenario. It's a misunderstanding, a tragic, really, really unfortunate misunderstanding between cultures, which is good. Okay, because you can say, well, the humans were bad for firing, and the humans would basically respond, but they came over their weapons hot. You say, but that's a peace overture. What do you mean it's a peace overture? Etc. Babylon's 5 Minbari was a huge deal. That is really, really good. Yeah, weapons on show, not hiding anything. So if your culture associates different priorities of things, and this happens on Earth. We have different things. I mean, the handshake in Western cultures comes from the fact you extend your right hand to show that you're not carrying a weapon. Okay, that's what a handshake actually is. By the way, hello, I don't have a knife in my hand, and neither do you. Excellent. Okay, that's what that means. All right. The pilot is raiding with a party of 57. Hello, people raiding from the pirate stream. Pilot, sorry, not the pilot. Pirate. The pilot stream. Thank you. Good to see you all. Thank you for popping in. We're nattering here about science fiction and fantasy bad guys at the moment. We're currently talking about Babylon 5, so that's what we're kind of doing. So anyway, lovely to see you all, Pilot and friends of Pilot. So thank you very much for popping in. Really appreciate that. So that's what handshake is. Okay, handshake is basically you extending your right hand, going, I don't have a knife. Have you got a knife? And actually, no, I haven't got a knife either. Excellent. Well, neither of us have got knives, so it's unlikely we're going to stab each other at this point. That's what a handshake is. But that's a Western culture. Okay, there's no reason necessarily for any other culture to understand what a handshake means, because it's something that's very, very a Western thing, and it's very, when you start dealing with alien life forms, you're not going to if you stick your hand out. I mean, what does that mean? It's like, so the idea that a culture can misunderstand the intentions of another culture, I think is actually really, really good. That's good writing. That's really, really good writing. And that's the origin of the salute, says Snackers. Using a weapon hand to open the visor of your helmet to render yourself vulnerable and identifiable. Okay, I didn't know that. Is that so? You're basically opening your helmet. Ah, interesting. I didn't know that. That's quite good. And the origin of a bow is showing there's nothing concealed between your head and wig. True. Could be. Babylon 5, you see, and so Babylon 5 was good because all the characters, again, there's not, they've all got motivations, they've all got flaws, they've all got weakness. I quite like Babylon 5, and because Babylon 5 was written over season arcs, which is something that writers struggle with today because everybody keeps cancelling shows too early. You can't get those long arcs in place. Babylon 5 was one of the first ones that did that, of course, because before that with Star Trek, everything had to be resolved within an episode, which made the storytelling quite constricted. Whereas Babylon 5, you wouldn't resolve things in an episode. It would run over several things and sometimes multiple seasons, and that can give you much more flexibility as a writer. The problem you have is if the season gets cancelled or if your show gets cancelled into season 3 and you haven't resolved everything, then you usually have to write a really difficult wrap-up episode, which is a bit contrived and not very helpful, and that's happened a few times as well. So all those sorts of things are actual kind of, I suppose, meta problems for writers, is the sense that sometimes you have to wrap things up quickly. You haven't got a choice because the show's ending, or you didn't get the option to do the next book, and so on and so forth. Without Babylon 5, there wouldn't have been a Deep Space. I mean, Babylon 5 I rate way higher than Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine, I didn't enjoy as much. I mean, it was okay. It was okay, but I didn't enjoy it anywhere near as much as Babylon 5. And they could make a movie to explain the ending. I suppose that's true. Golden Compass, love the books. Golden Compass, didn't like the film. Oh, the film. No. So some good stuff there. And again, in all those sort of things, who are the bad guys and who are the good guys? That's an important thing. So looking at it, if you're, and I put, maybe the word protagonist and antagonist is good, because an antagonist is kind of someone who's working against the protagonist, and the protagonist is trying to achieve something arguably laudable, something positive. If you can make your antagonist have a reason for what they're doing, and I think also, there's a classic thing with the bad guys, is that bad guys seem to always be winning right up until they make some fundamental error right at the end. That's a classic thing. Bad guys, can't possibly go wrong. If you're in a situation with a book, if you've got either multiple books or you've got multiple episodes and stuff, let the bad guys win sometimes. Yeah. Let them win. That's why, again, going back to Star Wars in A New Hope, I like the fact that they did blow up Alderaan. At least the Death Star got that one shot off. Okay, to me that's quite a good point, because it basically, it shows the ruthlessness and the power of the weapon and the people in charge of it. But the bad guys have to get ahead some of the time. Okay, the good guys have to suffer setbacks. What you don't want is that the final kind of the final end piece is basically the good guys overcoming all possible odds with, to quote the guy from, I don't know if you guys have watched the pitch meetings. We've been watching them. They're just absolutely hysterical because they're brilliant. So if you haven't seen them, look up pitch meetings on YouTube. And the guy he's got this lovely catchphrase, which is, whenever he comes across a plot hole, he basically goes, he comes up with the phrase, surely that's going to be really, really difficult. Actually, no, it's not. It's going to be super easy. Barely an inconvenience. It's like you're kind of looking at the scenario going, there's no way the good guys can get out of this one this time, and it's like, bing, they do. It's just like, you've got to stop doing that. That's not good writing. So pitch meetings are brilliant. Check out pitch meetings if you haven't seen them. They're really, really funny. Empire Strikes Back, you see, that's one of the reasons I think that film is so well respected in the Star Wars kind of canon, is that the good guys just get their asses kicked, don't they? All the way through. And Hoth, the Empire defeats them. In the asteroid belt, the Empire kind of defeats them. Luke gets his hand chopped off, and the good guys don't really achieve a great deal in Empire Strikes Back. Other than kind of getting away at the end, and Darth Vader goes through his kind of killing spree. So Empire Strikes Back is actually quite good. The bad guys have their show, which is good. Barely an inconvenience. There we go. So Deus Ex. Don't do the Deus Ex Machina. Don't magic the good guys out of trouble. Okay, they need to get out, by clever, witty, clever stuff. That the bad guy could potentially have overlooked. Okay, so none of those classic cliches that we've complained about. So the good guys mustn't be able to just work out the bad guy's password. That's appalling writing. Okay, don't do that. They can't just plug in some device that gives them control over the bad guy's thing. That's not good writing. They can't exploit a previously completely undocumented flaw in the bad guy's whatever he's got. Okay, that's just they need to outsmart him, not use the MacGuffin of doom or it's because I'm the good guy. The powers of good are with me. You need to have respect for both of your protagonist and the antagonist. And if you can blur the line so that actually people are going, is this the antagonist or the protagonist? I think that can make for an interesting story, relatable characters. Blame the Hoth monster, former combat medic here, though I'm training for management now. Okay, good stuff. Well done. Training for management, awesome. When it comes to Deep Space Nine, I think the best episode is in the Pale Moonlight, and Benjamin manufactures evidence to get the Romulans into the war against the Dominion. So that sort of underhanded manipulation is good. So when the good guys have to twist the rules and actually become a bit bad, or the bad guys have some redeeming features and have to kind of actually, we'll follow the course of honour today, that sort of thing. That's quite good. Plot armour, plot armour must be eradicated. Okay, the good guys can't be killed because we know they need to come back next week. That phrase, "kill your darlings." Now, if you've got an episodic TV series, you are going to struggle. You don't want to recycle your characters too fast, so there are some problems with that. But in a finite series of stories, or where there's some stakes, then as a writer, kill people. Do don't go all George R.R. Martin and kill everybody just because you can. But killing people where it's not necessarily expected for them to die is interesting and good. And it's kind of like, whoa, I really like them. I wasn't expecting them to die. Going back on my own experiences at the time, I must admit I was kind of a bit alarmed. But back in 2017, when obviously in Elite Dangerous, when Salome was killed, actually. Looking back on it now, that was a way, way better end for that character than for her to just sort of, retire somewhere on some moon with a Cobra Mark III parked on some nice beach somewhere. The fact that she died, we know all about the other stuff that happened around it, but the fact that she actually died makes her far more memorable as a character. than she otherwise would have been, which actually is quite good, because everyone's like, oh yeah, she died. You know, we weren't expecting her to die. She died. You know, that's much better than actually she's still alive, but she's retired on leasty. She's on the beach. But and yeah, I know all the arch villains and stuff. But that sort of stuff is interesting. Now, that was one of the refreshing and surprising thing about George R.R. Martin is you're used to the good. I always felt that George R.R. Martin took it a bit to excess, but the idea that the good guys can be killed is a good, healthy one. I think George R.R. Martin just got a little bit carried away and just started. The problem was, as a writer, you have got a tension between giving characters that readers can kind of go, okay, I want to follow along what happens to this person, and putting them in genuine peril and believing that they might be killed. You've also got then the creative tension on the other side, which is actually, if I kill them off, then that's it. I can't use them again. And the emotional time that people have invested in this character is then lost. Okay. So there is a difficulty there. So I tend to have a bit of a rule in my storytelling that I will probably only end up killing between 1/3 and 2/3 of the cast. I will always, if that makes sense, I'll always leave some people to survive that that kind of get through the Maelstrom event, because I'm conscious that I do want people to root for certain characters and follow them all the way through the story to the end. Now the thing is, everybody dies, okay, at some point. Now, and they might die by being murdered or blown up or shot down by a spaceship or whatever, or they might just die quite peacefully in their bed in their old age. Now, it depends where your story starts and stops as to whether somebody's death is within that thing. And I think that's what George R.R. Martin did teach us, is that death, particularly kind of in medieval world with lots of swords and dangerous things going on, is pretty common. You would expect lots of people to die because it's a dangerous place. And I think if you're doing, in the case of My Shadewood, it's a fairly dangerous place as well. And the Elite Dangerous universe is also dangerous. The clue's in the title there. So we expect people to die because that's what the story is all about. Now, if you're writing something a little bit more modern, some political cliffhanger, drama set in the 21st century, then in leafy suburban England, then I wouldn't expect too many people to die, okay, because that's just not a normal occurrence. It depends on your environment. You need to be true to that environment. I'm a butcher, yes, I know. Well, you can bring them back from the dead, but that's kind of into it was all a dream territory, and I don't like doing that. There goes Alderaan again. Kill people off. Do bad things. If you want your baddies to be bad, or at least ruthless and destructive, then let them be ruthless and destructive. So I think that's important. But believability. They don't just blow things up because I tell you what should we do today? Let's destroy a planet because that's a cool thing to do, isn't it? They're sending a message of fear out across the entire galaxy. We have the ability to destroy planets. If you don't comply, we'll come and destroy your planet. That's okay. You could argue it's a little bit heavy-handed, but it's kind of believable. If you've got a planet-killing weapon and you've got enough dissent in the galaxy that a planet-killing weapon makes sense to have, then why wouldn't you use it as a demo and say, right, okay, we're going to blow up one planet, but we don't really want to. I suppose you can argue. Here's a controversial one for the Americans on the stream. Actually, is you guys, the Americans, dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan at the end of the Second World War, which effectively stopped the war. Okay, so that was the biggest. I think still the biggest single weapon deployed in a conflict in the history of humanity. Okay, now that's kind of analogous, if you like. And I'm not drawing the parallel too strongly here because I think that would be wrong. But it's kind of analogous to, okay, so that we effectively have a city-destroying weapon. One bomb, okay, can wipe out an entire city. Boom, Hiroshima. Boom. I think a few days later, Nagasaki. At that point, it kind of goes, you guys have the option: you surrender or you don't surrender, right? Because if you don't surrender, we'll just keep doing this to your cities. And the Japanese capitulate because they can't repel that firepower. They don't have anything that they can do about it. Now, is that is that a good thing that the Second World War came to an end in that scenario? Yeah, and there's lots of other complexities around this, but there are similarities in the sense we have an ultimate weapon and you don't have an ultimate weapon. You must bow to our demands. Now, I don't think you can equate the United States to the empire or the Japanese to the resistance in that scenario. But it's the application of power. Okay, we have the ultimate weapon. That's interesting in those scenarios. Steve's got to go to work. And arguably it had much lower, because if you're going to, the Japanese, I think, would not have stopped fighting in conventional warfare. So the cost of that, subduing that would have been horrendous. But thousands and thousands of people atomized in a split second because of a nuclear bomb. And then mutually assured destruction. So in the 1980s, with all the nuclear weapons in the world, we could have both sides. The former USSR and the USA, with the UK actually operating as a sort of missile outpost on the edge of Europe. We could have obliterated each other many times over with the nuclear arsenal that we have. Now, we don't have so many nuclear weapons now, but we could still do that. And it's basically, still kind of calling each other's each other's bluffs. So the US is not a cardboard cutout villain. No, I suppose that's very true. Churchill's biggest dilemma. It's the same thing in the British day. Exactly. We had to bomb the French Navy out of existence, who were actually on our side, to stop them falling into Nazi hands. So there's a tactical, strategic decision. Do we destroy a friendly fleet that is likely to be taken over by the opposing power? It's war games, isn't it? And difficult decisions have to be made. The problem with ultimate weapons is it has to be deployed at least once to make it work, which kind of gives you that sense, doesn't it? Complicated scenarios. So who's the good guy and the bad guy in those scenarios? Both sides caused a lot of death. That's the nature of conflict. And history is generally written by the winners. So if you take your Star Wars analogy, then the rebellion wins ultimately and defeats the Empire. Or at least it defeats the evil at the heart of the Empire. But then the First Order, or whatever it's called, New Order, First Order? No, New Order's banned, isn't it? It's like the Depeche Mode takes over. No, New Order is a band. The First Order is the next set of evil baddies that turn up in the Star Trek universe, and it's just flipping between good and bad again, bringing balance to the Force and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. So I think the thing is, if you're going to write antagonists and protagonists, make each side believe they're genuinely in the right. Okay, so if, contrast again with the Second World War is that. Both sides, particularly if I look at the UK and Germany in type of thing, believe fervently that God was on their side. God was supporting their battle, and you can look throughout the history of religious conflict, and all sides always believe that the God, the celestial being, is on their side and is blessing their activities, and so. People believe they're the good guys. People always believe they're the good guys, and the others, those over there, are the heathens, are the evil, are the ones that need to be subdued, destroyed, capitulate, etc., etc., etc. If you write your villains, or even your antagonists and protagonists, with believable motivations for the actions that they take, you don't actually need to worry about good guys and bad guys, because maybe they're just, different aspects of the same thing. I don't know. That's how I tend to try and approach it. I don't try and think in terms of good guys and bad guys. I just try to think of people or organisations or structures that are attempting to achieve something, and some of them are more ruthless than others. And I think if you head that way, you end up with believable characters and believable structures that will help you make good, believable things. And if they become ruthless in order to achieve something, or they're forced into being ruthless because they have no choice, or they're faced with an impossible choice between two bad choices and they have to choose one. The fact that they've chosen one means something. All those sort of moral dilemmas. Dresden was the worst city bombings in World War II. Well, there you go. See, and that was perpetrated by the UK. First of all, the Death Star was the most risible and pathetic death machine. It's a bit like Jurassic World, isn't it? Tell you what, this has gone wrong before, so what we're going to do this time is exactly the same thing. It's like, so the previous Death Star was blown up by having an exhaust port. Okay, so the second Death Star, what we're going to do is make an exhaust port that you can actually fly a ship down. That's going to be far better. And the last one, the Star Killer base, well, that one you don't even have to fly down a trench or even inside. You can just blow up a thermal regulator on the surface, and then it will blow up. It's like design flaws are us. Is there still a place for... Oh, I missed a question, sorry. Is there still a place for... is this... I can't find the original... It's gone too far up the thing. Is this... Oh, there we go. Is there still a place for older style sci-fi that was driven nearly entirely on higher order concepts, or is it necessary in the current market to focus on character development and let the what if God was a computer made by people kind of stuff be in the background, not the main topic? I think it goes in fits and starts. I think it is out of fashion at the moment. A lot of science fiction tends to often, I think, hold up a mirror to the social problems that people are experiencing at the time. So at the moment, society is in quite a lot of confusion in general over what is right and wrong and what is good and bad and all the things that we've been discussing on the stream. So a lot of our fiction right now is very ambiguous, very much not definitive, i.e. This isn't right or wrong, it just is. So exactly the sort of stuff that we've been talking about on stream. Whereas I think some of the certainties were a bit clearer in the past. Issues were less confused, or people were more definitive about sort of the actions that we take. I think we're going to see a lot of science fiction in the next few years, which is very much around the divisive nature of things. So things that we've already seen, things like The Expanse, where the politics is driving the story and everybody mistrusts each other a lot. I think we're going to see more of those sort of things in the short term. Will we get back to more of the slightly, I suppose, elevated stuff? It depends what people are scared of. It's the fear in society which I think motivates a lot of storytelling. So back in the 70s, it was fear of automation taking people's jobs. It was fear of the burgeoning nuclear threat and fear of armed conflicts in various different places. In the 80s, it became the nuclear threat, and in the 90s, it became social cohesion and various other things. In the 2000s, it became terrorism, and in the 2010s, it's become, I suppose, perhaps more financial and ecological with global warming and those sort of things. We're seeing fiction that kind of follows those sort of themes, and it lags behind a little bit, because obviously it takes the writers a little while to write the stories. So all of those things I think will echo the general wider concerns. So we will probably see a lot of the rise in science fiction that's looking at gender issues and things like that is I think not at all unsurprising, given the fact that we're as cultures at large, we're struggling with redefining what we think gender is and all those sort of things, and inclusion and minority rights, things like the Black Lives Matter movement and the Me Too movement. All those sort of things are going to drive science fiction stories, I think, for the next few years. You're going to see those sort of themes coming through because that's what society is talking about and agonizing about in general terms. And I think that's what drives the storytelling. So those sort of things. Climate, I think, is going to be coming back in a big way too. There's a lot of apocalyptic type tales as well out there as well. I wasn't going to jump down a political rabbit hole. No, I'll try and avoid that. We'll do that another time. Going back to the war stuff, people do appalling things in war because they can. There's a lot of stuff in there which basically shows that no side is pure and innocent when it comes to conducting warfare. It just isn't. It's just impossible. So all that sort of stuff is interesting. Green lives matter. Yeah, Thargoids lives matter. So all the identity stuff I think is going to be very, very interesting. I think that's going to come out. Thing. And so Bacchus there, the objective in war is to win. It's to defeat your opponent. And sometimes if you play fair, then you lose. So you can't play fair if the other side isn't playing fair. Or you see an opportunity to get an advantage by not playing fair. It's war, so you're going to do that. So you win as honourably as you can, but honour means nothing if you're dead. So all of these things I think are will drive. It's interesting that post 9/11, if you go back to to that event, a lot of the science fiction became very dark and very terrorist focused as a result of the sort of feelings and emotions that were around the 9/11 stuff. And that sort of whereas I suppose if you go back to the 60s, where we were kind of on the verge of I know the space race was political, but there was a sense of not quite enlightenment, but discovery and exploration, which drove some of the science fiction shows of the 60s. Going beyond the final frontier, seeking out new life, and it was all very kind of upbeat. And then in the 70s, the Vietnam War, I think, prompted things like Star Wars and the original Battlestar Galactica. Actually, no, this is we're struggling again and we're fighting, and it becomes more militaristic. And those things go in themes. They definitely go in themes. So what have we learned? What have we learned today? Well, there are lots and lots of badly written bad guys. Okay, so if you are considering writing a bad guy, please don't make them cookie cutter villains who are just bad for the sake of being bad. Unless you're writing a morality tale, there's nothing wrong with writing a morality tale, by the way, if that's what you want to do. If you have a very specific view on what you consider good and evil to be, or right and wrong, or good and bad on a particular topic, there's nothing stopping you from writing that, and then you can make characters reflect those views. But if you want to write something that is I suppose compelling by the standards of the day, which will change, then you most people are looking for characters with some nuance. Okay, people who they can say, actually, I could follow you, or at least I can appreciate your perspective on this matter. A recent example, The Avengers is pulpy, popcorny, Saturday afternoon movie sort of stuff, summer blockbuster things. But most of us will probably agree, I would hope, that the villain Thanos he's got a point. Even if there are other solutions to that problem, he's got a point, and I can kind of I don't agree with him, but I can see where he's coming from. And if you've got characters in your story who actually you can go, your readers, if you like, can go, actually no, I don't like them. They're a nasty piece of work, but I can see where they're coming from. Then you've got something that's worth having, because you don't want your bad guy really to just be bad because he's bad, or she's evil, because those are perspectives, I think, in storytelling at the moment now, and people like the nuanced characters are going to go, actually, what they're doing there is very believable given who they are, what they've been through, and where they're coming from. And of course, characters should make mistakes. So your good guys should make mistakes, and the best mistakes are those made where you can kind of say, they've got plausible options, both for which aren't quite right and quite wrong, and they have to make a call between what they think the best thing to do is. And you as the reader may know more than the character does, in which case you're sort of screaming mentally, don't do that thing, the thing that you're about to do, don't do that, because I know what's going to end. But the character doesn't know, and if you can write that into a believable framework, you've got something that allows your reader to get closer to the character and go, okay, yeah, they made a mistake, they made the wrong call, but I understand why they made the wrong call. And that's important. They don't just admit the wrong call because they were sheer bloody minded about it. So there we go. Thanos wasn't bad. He wanted to change the existing status quo. Well, yeah, there you go, you see. So we can defend Thanos. And I think that's healthy, because that's made us think about him as a bad. He's not just bad because he's bad. Although I think, who's his daughter with who's been sort of half converted into an android. I think he's pretty mean to her. I don't understand his motivation for doing that to his daughter, really. But he's got a point, but it's flawed, and that's okay, because he's got a warped perspective. So all those sort of things. Connor wants to be written up as the bad guy, and his ex-wife will give you a motive and list of bad points. Wives are very good at that. Yeah. Scorpius from Farscape was evil for no reason until we saw his backstory. Yes. So all those sort of things are good. Yeah, and you can introduce a character who's apparently just bad, as long as you've got a backstory in your back pocket as a writer that makes sense. Don't try and reverse engineer it though. Try and come up with that before you start writing is my advice. So tension is the reader knows it is a bad choice and wanting them to do it. Surprise is springing something in both the character and the reader. Yeah, so all those kind of things are good as well. So doing things and maybe pushing the characters beyond what they're normally able to cope with. I've done that with some of mine. Push one of them into a mental breakdown. Sounds a horrible thing to do to an imaginary person, but that's writing. So you can do those sort of things. It's quite good fun. Anyway, right, look at that. It's 10 to 10. I've been waffling on for far too long. So sorry about the technical problems at the beginning of the stream. Not quite sure what what was causing that, but it seems to have stayed up during the night. So anyway, I hope you found that interesting. That was part 2 of why are bad guys so dumb. And usually it's down to the writing. Okay, it's not the bad guy's fault. The writers are not quite where they should be. So if you let's make a positive pledge to write better bad guys. Okay. So take care, my friends. I will be back on Thursday, of course, for more Elite Dangerous. Back on Saturday for more Elite Frontier currently at the moment. More retro streaming. Hope you're enjoying that, and we'll go on from there. And I'll let you know what next week's topic is going to be. Something more to do with sci-fi and fantasy, of course. So hopefully it's got you thinking. That's the main part of these streams. So thank you very much, folks. Be good. And keep writing. Yeah, if you come up with ideas, keep writing. It's all good stuff. Keep creating things. It's really, really cool. Thank you for the follow there at the end. And that's much appreciated. We'll see you soon. Have a fantastic week ahead of you guys. Look after yourself. Crazy world out there, as per usual. And I will see you soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.